Welcome to the Biz Easy podcast, where small business is simplified for greater results. Brought to you by Resources and Development. Go to www.resources-development.com for help in taking your business to the next level. And now, help me welcome the host of the Biz Easy podcast, Steve McCrillis.
Welcome to the Biz Easy podcast, where small business is simplified for greater results. Coming to you recorded from a snow-packed mountain in the 45th state of the Union. My name is Skip Williams, lead business coach, and I'll be your guest host today as we learn how to stay better focused on the things that make you great. Today's topic comes from Steve McCrillis's blog called Selling. Now I'd like to introduce you to my partner and resident preacher of all things small business. So Steve, please testify and tell us how to sell.
No, in fact, really no.
All right.
It has always been my contention that people don't like to be sold, but they do like to buy. Now, I have adopted this notion long ago when I was in the tuxedo industry. I was responsible for recruiting, hiring, and training sales and management personnel for a 130-store retail operation in the Midwest. I've had the good fortune of working with many exceedingly qualified salespeople, many of whom had very little background experience in selling a product or service to the consumer. Now, I've recognized there are a few key components of people who are well suited to be the representative of the product or a service to the customer. As a qualifier, to your point, let me say that I in no way see myself as an expert in sales, but I do position myself as a person who can see when another person has made a significant connection between a product and or service and a customer's need. Moreover, I have seen when a representative has made an efficient conversion from a customer's need to a customer's want. And that is the essence of selling, in my humble opinion.
Wow.
That's
good.
Well, I wanted to qualify your preach about the fact that I'm the expert on sales. I'm not. But I do observe, as an analyst for the last 25 years, I do observe people selling, and I observe what makes good connections. Now, we've all had memorable, albeit laughable, experience to being sold to. Now, I defer to a recent phone call that I received from a person who called me to offer me affordable repair warranty for a car that, it turns out, I no longer owned. Well, how about better internet connectivity in my home, only to find out that they didn't offer service in my area? Or on the flip side, I think we can all attest to knowing someone who can sell ice to Eskimos. Now, can I even say that?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe today and maybe tomorrow you won't be able to.
That's right. No disrespect to the indigenous people. Nevertheless, we know a person who has sold us something that perhaps we didn't even know we needed until we heard the pitch. Now, I believe that there is a certain attitude, if you will, or skill in being able to communicate the value of a product to a person they never met. So what is it, do you suppose? I also know many who are true targets for aggressive and even non-aggressive salespeople. Perhaps they just can't say no, but they end up buying everything offered until one day they just avoid the situation altogether.
Steve, I found the easiest people to sell to are salespeople. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that people who deliberately and passionately want to provide a service or a product to somebody understand that that's where that salesperson is coming from. As you can see, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on every turn here, except for the guy that's trying to sell me a warranty.
Okay. So yeah, it's that benefit of the doubt thing. I got that. That makes sense.
I don't want to ostracize any high-level salespeople. See, my simple credo in doing business with others is know, like, trust. Now, I believe that you must first know someone before you can decide if you like them, to then conclude that you can now trust them. Now, maybe I'm not Will Rogers, who once quoted as saying, "I never met a man that I didn't like." But my thought process follows a simple pattern. It's a process that I share often when talking to others in business about their marketing, advertising, and even networking efforts. When you're in a situation where it's a brief encounter, a chance meeting, or even if you're in pursuit of a product or service, what makes the difference for you to engage or not to engage? I, for one, think it is in fact about attitude. It's also about presentation. I'm not sure anyone is comfortable being cornered. I also don't respond well to a hard come on, but perhaps I'm a bit over analytical to be a fair judge. I don't know if you feel that, but That's kind of who I am.
Steve, I know a lot of salespeople who get on the phone, get a lot of phone slams on them. Uh, I have to think that they must have a really thick skin. Is this a numbers game or is it a skill?
Um, well, if you don't have the skill, it becomes a numbers game, yes. Because
Ah,
why do
okay.
some people have a very high closing rate and other people don't? Well, it depends on the deliverer, and we'll circle back to this question as we close today.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier, I pride myself in being able to see a connection between a person selling and a person buying. It happens when the person presenting has recognized a need, a solution, or an answer to the person being presented to. Further, they do so in a manner that is not overbearing or intrusive. I have always been a strong proponent of conveying benefit and value to fulfill a relationship between a buyer and a seller. Now, that sounds pretty simple and straightforward, but how do you suppose you get to know what the customer wants? Well, the answer, you ask questions. Now, again, having been an analyst for over 25 years, I ask a lot of questions, almost to the point of interrogatory, which is why I don't qualify myself as a very good salespeople, because I could get a little over interrogatory. As you ask questions, you can make assumptive lead-ins, which are dangerous. Before I get too much further, I must interject that before you can make any inroads with a prospective client, customer, or consumer, you must be passionate about what it is you're presenting. Because if you don't believe in it, why in the world should they? Is that fair?
Oh yeah. I know I'm the worst salesperson on the planet, Steve. And I think you know that I'm the worst salesperson on the planet. But if it weren't for passion, I would have starved a long time ago. I really think that no matter what the technique, if you're not passionate about it, what you do, then they see that you really don't believe in what you're selling. Don't you think?
Oh, that's absolutely true. You know when somebody really doesn't know the product, which we'll get into, or really have an interest in selling it other than perhaps the commission. And I don't think anybody is truly just driven by commission. Thus,
Right.
passion and attitude are key. But are they quantifiable? Again, that's the analyst in me. That is a great argument, but I believe everyone has a sense that they are being sold when those two qualities are not present. I also believe that most, if not all, buying decisions are made with emotion, but they only hold when they are supported by reason and logic. Sure, I'd like to spend all my free time in the tropics sipping a Mai Tai, but logic tells me that's not a practical, reasonable, or logical. However, if I can reasonably justify the cost with the product for its return on value, and I get to sip a Mai Tai now and again, now then let's get busy. No, I have never purchased a timeshare, but you get the analogy.
Hmm.
The attitude of the presenter comes into play when he or she doesn't overstep their limitations for presentation. Embellishing return, avoiding small print, and worst of all, misrepresentation are naturally all deal killers. A person will believe most of what they hear until they hear something that they absolutely do not believe, then the rest is up for question. Converting a need to a want, that is the true deal maker. I trust most people to know what they need, but I absolutely trust someone to know what they want. If the need is easily converted to a want and vice versa, you are going in the right direction. Now, that's the value and benefit part. Nobody buys a self propelled lawnmower because it's more efficient, but because it provides a benefit over one that is not self propelled. It's easier, but it's not more efficient. That's a benefit. Will I spend the extra $100 for the self propelled mower? If I want that benefit, yes. Do I need that benefit? Not really. I failed to mention that before you can present a product or service to a prospective customer, you'd better know what you're talking about. Learn it, understand it, and be an expert, or it's going to be an uphill battle. If your passion for the product still holds, you're almost there.
Steve, I got a few questions for you, but before I even get into those, I've read this. I read this blog a few times now, and I really didn't get it until today. So I would encourage our listeners to focus on what I'm about to say. The whole key is we're not approaching that customer unless they need the product already or product or service already. But the trick is turning that need into a want. I love that, Steve. That really, I mean, the light bulb came over my head when you talked about that. I have to say, that's amazing.
Well, it's not like a salesperson tries to talk them into wanting it. But if you express the benefit in a manner that, based on the questions that you've asked, will fit that person's lifestyle or that person's pyramid of wants, well, then you got yourself a transaction, if you will.
Right, right. And my experience with salespeople is that they often overpromise, they lowball, etc. Is this a valid strategy for locking in the sale and worrying about the delivery later?
No, I mean, you need to be upfront with everything because, well, again, that I'm speaking from my personal perspective. I've always said that we don't see things as they are; we see things as we are. But that's just me. Okay, salespeople, if they put themselves into the consumer's mind, into consumer's position, they would get a better understanding exactly what the best way to present that. But you're not trying to present something that's not true. You'd agree with that.
I suppose it boils down to you can fool me once, right? So if these are one-time customers, maybe it works. But if you want a long-term relationship with your customers, this is not a good strategy.
Berate and belittling customers, and this is an old analogy, but one that we're all familiar with. And I don't mean to give this group of people, group of professionals, a bad rap, but used car salesmen. I mean, we all have a cliche, a very very usual view of a used car salesman coming up and telling you all the things that you didn't know you wanted and you didn't know you needed, but all of a sudden you can't be without it, right? And that hard, high pressure type of sales process. To this day, my wife will not go with me whenever we have to trade in our car or buy another car. She doesn't want any part of that because she has that stereotypical background thought about sales, and she's not a
Hmm.
fan.
I can understand that. So go ahead. I interrupted you. Continue.
Selling is not for everyone. I once heard that we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. You heard me say that a couple seconds ago. Your perspective on the product or service is based on how you see it. Learn how to see it as they see it. If
Mm,
how you see it and how they see it are alike, then you are well on your way to making a great connection. Because if you think it's too expensive, you'll convey that in your attitude and your presentation. In my diagnosis of selling style seems a bit esoteric, so be it. Maybe that's why salespeople always get that bad rap. I'll repeat my opening contention. People don't like to be sold, but they do like to buy.
that's very, very true. Being analytical myself, I always try to sell the features rather than benefits. I try to make the logical argument as to why to buy. Maybe you can tell us why that's such a big mistake, Steve.
Well, again, you can give all the reasons. Not everybody thinks logically, not everybody thinks reasonably. I think we can all agree with that. Every buying decision, in my mind, is made emotionally. But if it's supported with reason and logic and something that gives that logic, because imagine this scenario. A husband comes home and he tells his wife, "You're not going to believe what I bought. I bought the neatest tractor you would ever imagine. It's got air conditioning, it has all the attachments, it goes everything. You can do everything that we wanted to do on our farm." And he is so passionate about this thing. He is so excited about it. And he got so emotionally swept up into it. And then the wife does what? Inevitably, she starts asking questions. Well, we didn't have the money for that. And we have a tractor. And the one we have is convertible, some of the equipment that you're talking about. And now suddenly, his entire emotional angst is being reduced a little at a time. But if he can support those other suggestions that she has with reason and logic, because the salesperson asked him those things, well, then he's got a better argument. But if he is only charged by emotion, that sale is going to fall apart. But if it's supported by logic and reason, all the things that turns that want into a need, well, it's going the opposite direction, and you got yourself a sale.
So you sell him the want, but you give him the justification with why he needs it as well. Is that what you're
Emotion,
saying?
reason, and logic. Absolutely.
Inter- Interesting. Okay. Steve, I remember when I first met you, you were having doubts about the consulting company that you were selling for at that time. How do you think those doubts affected your sales?
I can tell you unequivocally when I had questions about the deliverable, you can read it in a person's voice. You can read it in their demeanor. You can read it in their mannerisms. It's like all of a sudden I have to sell, and I'm not trying to pick on any car dealer. I want to sell Studebakers. Well, it's an inferior product. It can't do the things that most people want. It doesn't have the features that most people want. Yet I have to sell because it's the only job I get because I'm kind of an idiot. So this is what I suddenly have to sell. If I don't believe it, you think I'm going to convince anybody that it's going to be a good product for them? No, you have to own it. You have to be able to get to a point where you understand its value and be able to convey that. Because you can't convey that, and nobody's going to buy it from you.
You went from one of the top sellers to probably one of the lowest there over that period of time, didn't you, Steve?
It was a short period of time where I questioned, yes, and I recognized, well, because of that, I recognized that before, my entire ambition was to essentially make sure that all of my clients had the absolute best treatment they could get, and I was backed by the notification that they would. And then over a period of time, I realized something isn't right. I'm not being able to convey that information because I didn't believe it anymore. So that's when it was a good time to change directions, to pick a different lane, so to speak.
Right, right. Well, I'm so glad I met you, and my belief in you is huge. So I think we have a pretty good relationship in that regard. But uh, I don't take no. I mean, I take no as a personal failure. I mean, is there any hope for me to sell anything?
No. Well, as I pointed out earlier, selling isn't for everyone. And on some level, you're always selling yourself, right? When you're interviewing for a job, or you're looking for a promotion, or you're trying to work with one of your colleagues on a project, you're selling. You're essentially trying to convey your motion, your notion, your idea, your operational process to someone else. It may not feel like selling, but that's essentially what you're doing. But if you're just having a communication with somebody or having a conversation and you start expressing some of the benefits and what you've done and how it's simplified your life, I think people relate to that. Now, many of the times when I'm giving seminars and sometimes in these webinars, one of the first things I always do is I express one of my greatest failures as one of the business that I started, and I realized in short order that I had arrived at all the right detail to make sure the business was going to work. But the standing premise, the principle which I was started was wrong. The
Mm,
market was wrong that I was in, and my marketing was wrong. And I only admit that after the fact, because you never see it when you're right up on top of it. You see it when you step back, or was that where they talk about 2020 hindsight, right? But
hmm.
I always mention that first because nobody is without fault. And the minute that you have somebody's going to bring up an objection to the sale, well, to be able to address that and be able to say, I appreciate what you're saying and move on and go through that. I think that's an important part of selling too. But to your point, to your question, I think we're always selling, if not only yourself or
Mm.
your thought.
Persuading anyway. Yeah. Hmm.
Mhm.
Well, Steve, we're running out of time. So could you leave us with one big takeaway on how to improve your selling techniques?
Well, because I wish I could, Skip, but again, I not posed to be any special salesperson, nor am I necessarily one that would advise somebody on how to become a great salesperson. I just look at selling from an outside perspective and know what works. I think that the things that you really take away or should take away is number one, be passionate about what you're selling. Number
Hmm.
two, you have to know the product in and out. You have to be able to describe everything about it and be able to overcome objections if they're legitimate. Have the right attitude towards it because everybody that walks on, I don't care how they're dressed, what they drive up in, or how they present themselves, they are a potential customer and you treat them accordingly. So
And don't be desperate, right?
people can smell the shark, or shall I say, the shark can smell the bait.
The blood in the water. That's right.
I don't think a person can smell a shark, but the other way around sounded better.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Steve, you want to clap us out and tell us where we're going? It's a wrap, right?
That's a wrap.
All right. Take care, folks. See you next time.